1 year and 2 months ago, Final Fantasy VII Remake launched and shook the foundation of the Final Fantasy community and a large part of the gaming community in general too. Not simply because of its ambition, but because of its surprisingly good execution of its goals, which were previously seen as impossible to accomplish due to insanely high expectations. It's not easy to take a 23-year-old classic that countless millions love and respect and just redo it all. And it's definitely not easy to attempt such a thing and get away with it unscathed by angry, purist fans who consider such an act to be sacrilege. But Square Enix did it anyway, and in the eyes of many, they succeeded with flying colors, spitting in the face of those overwhelming odds stacked against them. In my eyes as well, expectations were met, and in some ways exceeded. The experience left such an impression on me, it's what led me to create this very YouTube channel and make my very first ever video review. Honestly, even when I hit the end credits of the game, I still wasn't finished with it. For weeks on end, I watched others play it. I listened to people talk about fan theories, and I went back and played more myself. This meta side of the experience is what bumped Remake to my #1 spot in my top 5 games of 2020 list. Because it's rare for a game to take up so much space in my head rent-free, in a good way. It goes without saying at this point, but one of the most painful things about loving Remake is the unavoidable multi-year wait we have to endure before getting our hands on Part 2. With luck, its development cycle won't be as long as Part 1's, but even then, we're in for the long haul. However, Square Enix has decided to ease our pain a bit by giving us the new and improved Intergrade update to the game, which is a next-gen exclusive experience featuring improved graphics and lighting, faster loading times, and additional content in the form of episode Intermission, which features everyone's favorite ninja and materia thief, Yuffie Kisaragi. The last-gen version of Remake actually managed to look quite beautiful in spite of being optimized for 7, now 8-year-old hardware. But to have it look even better as it takes advantage of significantly more powerful hardware is great to see. So do the improved visuals, performance, and extra content truly elevate the experience as much as we like? Well, let's quit stalling and finally dive into the review. Before we talk about Yuffie's content, let's first talk about the graphical improvements given by this next-gen re-release. As its announcement trailer showed, there are indeed 2 visual settings for the game, performance and graphics. The latter prioritizes the highest possible quality of textures and assets, but limits the game to 30 frames per second, and the former prioritizes 60 frames per second while slightly sacrificing visual detail. I did switch back and forth between the 2 modes fairly frequently, and I noticed only tiny differences. For the most part, it looks like character models are more or less untouched when you're on performance mode. They seem to stay looking as good as possible regardless of how you're playing. It's mostly the environmental textures that appear to take a hit. No matter which setting you choose, however, the game still does boast the drastically improved lighting and fog effects the reveal trailer showed off. Light sources actually color and illuminate things around them, especially the main characters, and the fog makes specific scenes so much more atmospheric. It's a small change, but adds much more depth to the environment around the characters. Things that were already really pretty in the PS4 version are even more impressive now. At the end of the day, the graphical differences between the 2 modes are pretty minuscule, and sacrifices in detail aren't all that great when opting for performance. It reminds me of the Demon's Souls remake, which also managed to look stellar regardless of which setting you picked. In the original release, there were certain situations that caused specific textures to load improperly, which in turn made them look much muddier than they were clearly intended to look. I recall someone data mining the game to discover that these particular textures were indeed high quality, it's just that the game didn't load them right. Thankfully, in Intergrade, this issue no longer exists. Yes, that means the apartment doors are fixed, and the skybox of the underside of the upper plate has been improved too, as well as landscapes of the surrounding ground-level slums. Even though they're essentially JPEGs, the game does a much better job now at giving the illusion that they are actual in-game locations you could walk to if you somehow found a way. Then there's the new photo mode that's now included here too. It's become a rising trend to include one in games that have a focus on high-quality 3D assets, and while I don't use them terribly often, I appreciate their existence. However, the photo mode here in Final Fantasy VII Remake feels much more limited compared to others I've messed around with. For me personally, the king of the photo mode mountain is Ghost of Tsushima, due to how incredibly easy it is to use and how many ways you can edit your snapshot. Sadly, Remake's photo mode is absolutely nowhere near as robust, which is a shame because it feels like you're limited in ways to take advantage of the beautiful makeover the game received. When you open up photo mode, you're very limited in how much you can move the camera away from Cloud. You can't even tilt it 90 degrees to make a portrait shot. There's a lot of filters, which is nice, and there's an exposure setting, but there's no contrast slider or depth of field. It's definitely still possible to take some nice shots, of course, but you're probably going to have to get really clever in terms of placement and timing in order to make up for the lack of options. However, the game does allow you to pause and enter photo mode during in-game cutscenes too. So if you see a cool shot in a cutscene, you can snap it and apply filters like normal. You just can't move the camera, which is perfectly reasonable in this situation. And then there's loading times. If you played Remake on the PS4 with its stock 5400 RPM hard disk drive like I did, then you probably recall loading times being anywhere between 15 and 40 seconds long, probably more, depending on where in the game you were loading in. However, with Intergrade on the PlayStation 5, I don't think I've ever waited longer than 3 seconds when loading up a save. I continue to be impressed not just by the graphics, but by loading times in this new generation too. Now, with the more technical stuff out of the way, we can finally talk about Yuffie and the intermission content. You take control of the young Wutaian ninja as she infiltrates the Sector 7 slums to meet up with the main cell of Avalanche, the environmental freedom fighters slash eco-terrorists, whatever you want to call them. Among them are new characters Nayo, Billy Bob, and Polk, who we admittedly don't see that much throughout Intermission. The actual important support character here is Sonon, another Wutaian who acts as Yuffie's sole partner throughout the DLC. Together they seek to sneak into Shinra headquarters in hopes of stealing an alleged ultimate materia they're supposedly manufacturing. Narratively, Intermission is settled between the end of the Airbuster fight and the collapsing of the Sector 7 plate in the base game. This DLC is technically divorced from the base game in terms of accessibility because you play it from the main menu, meaning it's not weaved into the base game in a way where you play as Cloud and then switch over to Yuffie. Part of me wishes it was like this because I think it would have made replaying the base game more worthwhile. But at the end of the day, you can still technically do it yourself if you know where to place the events. If you've seen my review of the main game, which is the first video I ever made, then you know how seriously I take the characters of this world. I stated that even if everything about Remake was amazing, but the main cast was empty of any personality, then I would still hate it. But luckily, they weren't. Everyone's character really shined, and that was probably the biggest highlight of the game for me. The same fear and expectations applied to Intermission too. Last year, in the weeks following the release of Remake, I used to worry about the possibility of Yuffie being as annoying as Kyrie when she appeared, but thankfully she's not. While she is indeed proud and rambunctious, Yuffie is an endearing personality who adds life to basically every scene she's in. She's a skilled ninja, yes, but she's still very much an adventurous and headstrong teenager at heart too, and also kind of a dork. She's endearing and does more than enough to prove that she can be the main character of a big DLC such as this. And then there's Sonon, who actually does a great job of balancing Yuffie's carefree, go-getter attitude by being more stoic and sensible. And as a support character, he's given a sufficient amount of depth to carry his existence throughout Intermission, with his own backstory and motivations. As a pair, Yuffie and Sonon are fantastic to follow from beginning to end, and they complement each other very well. One of the coolest things that Intermission does is allowing Yuffie to interact a lot with her surroundings, particularly in the first chapter, which takes place almost entirely within the Sector 7 slums. A lot of support characters from the base game make their return, and Yuffie has a chance to meet them all, and even play Fort Condor with most of them, which I'll talk about more in a bit. As DLC, Intermission really goes above and beyond when it comes to adding more to the world of Midgar, and it is very much welcome, because if the Remake saga stays true to the general structure of the original game, then we won't come back here for a very long time. So, in a way, Intermission isn't just an introduction for Yuffie, but also a farewell for the city of Mako. As you might expect from a new main character, there's some new combat mechanics that are specific to her too. Yuffie stands out, mechanically, from the cast of the main game because, unlike any of them, she's efficient at both melee and ranged attacks. Whereas Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith only have one way of attacking normally, and Barret technically has both too, but he needs certain weapons equipped, Yuffie can switch between either on the fly, and she's good at both. By pressing triangle in combat, she throws her giant shuriken, and while it's gone, she can use ninjutsu to attack from afar. I was able to get through all of Intermission using ranged attacks almost exclusively, at least 90% of the whole game. It just worked so well. One of the biggest complaints I had about combat in the main game, and probably the only complaint about it that I would consider big at all, is the terrible air combat. Cloud and Tifa had very limited options in the air, and fighting flying enemies with them was terrible, which is unfortunate because I consider them the most fun to play with in general. However, Yuffie has way more control in the air, as she can use her weapon to close distance in midair, and she can use certain abilities in the air too. And then there's Sonon. You can equip weapons, armor, accessories, and materia to him, but unfortunately he cannot be directly controlled, and can only be given orders through the tactical menu, meaning he's essentially completely AI. But he's very reliable and is able to keep himself alive with competency. Matter of fact, if he has a half-decent materia loadout, he'll probably stay alive better than you can. You also have the option of synergizing with him in order to coordinate attacks with him for big damage, and eventually this will include coordinating with Yuffie's special offensive abilities too. Honestly, the general combat experience of Intermission is probably better than the base game on average. Yuffie is so kinetic and useful, and Sonon is so dependable that despite being DLC, it feels much more polished. But the combat doesn't stop at just the bad guys you fight with your giant shuriken. The combat also extends to the tabletop in the form of Fort Condor. If you played the original game, you probably remember the minigame, and likely in a not so fond manner. It had a reputation of being boring as sin and not particularly engaging, even if you did find out how to cheese it. The return of this minigame was on a lot of people's minds, and I assume a few fans didn't expect it to return at all. But Square Enix managed to modify it in a way that not only makes sense within the world of Remake, but also makes it much more fun and investing and less of a chore. It still maintains its real-time strategy foundation and more or less plays the same, but now it's become competitive, with opponent NPCs having their own bases to protect. You pick a board, which has its own capabilities like ATB speed and materia loadout, then you pick your units, which are divided into 3 classes, and each has a strength and weakness to the other classes, meaning a rock-paper-scissors system is also involved. Your ATB meter fills up as time passes, and you spend it to put down units. The stronger the unit, the more ATB they cost. Fairly simple, but a decent amount of planning and strategy will still be needed to take down some of the tougher NPCs. I'm quite surprised to be saying this myself, but I enjoy Fort Condor now. It's undeniably preferable over both the original iteration of the minigame and some of the side quests Cloud has to do in the slums of the base game. It's just a much more interesting investment of time than looking for cats. Overall, Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, bit of a mouthful as it may be, is a wonderful upgrade to one of the best games of last year. It's prettier, smoother, and has additional content that offers great new characters, engaging combat, and a fun new minigame. It's a step up in every conceivable way. If you already own a PS4 version of the game and only intend on buying Intermission on its own, it's a very worthwhile $20 investment. I beat it on normal difficulty in 6 hours and 40 minutes, but there's more stuff to do afterward that can almost double that runtime if you wish to accomplish a 100% playthrough. That's a pretty hefty piece of DLC. I do wish it were longer myself, but that's more of a testament to how good it is rather than a criticism of its length. If Intermission is a taste of the quality we can expect from Remake Part 2 in another year and a half or so, then I'm more hyped for it now than I was 13 months ago. And admittedly, it's not just because of gameplay and graphics, but also because of story implications. But those are spoilers, and maybe I'll discuss them separately in a different video. This concludes my review on Intergrade. It's fantastic, and I can't even put into words how badly I want more of this remake saga. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.